Hey there, who's ready to look at some Pauper cards? It's Common Knowledge, the show where I look at common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you, are they any good for Pauper or not? I am excited. Not for any particular reason, just because I get to look at cool common cards again. Desecration Plague is 3 and a green for a sorcery. Destroy target enchantment or land. That's kind of interesting. It costs probably a little more than you'd like to pay, but destroying lands is not really a cheap thing you can do. You know, obviously there's Stone Rain, which is 3 mana. This does more than a Stone Rain, so it probably deserves that extra cost. I think there's enough other land destruction pieces in Pauper that this probably is not one that goes into your deck. But if you're playing that Ponza style deck and you're going up against Bogles or Mono White Heroic, maybe this is something you bring in from the sideboard to still like keep your plan, but now have an ability to take out enchantments. I'm gonna guess the answer is no. Like it's nice to have the modality, I guess, on the card, but I think you'd probably just sideboard in the things that you know. Like if you did want to take out Bogles or in any sort of enchantment style deck, maybe you just go for Serene Grace. Is that what it's called? Serene Grace. Serene Grace. That is not what it's called. Serene something. Serene Heart. Yeah, destroying all auras. That's a thing you can do. There's plenty of ways of getting rid of enchantments that I just don't think you'd end up playing this. Like, sure, it does work in those decks. I think every once in a while you'll find that, wow, that really worked well. But would it have worked better than a slightly cheaper spell that maybe even did a little bit more, that was a little bit more targeted? That's the math that you kind of got to do. And sometimes these do anything style effects sound nice until you actually get into the game and go, I wish I didn't have to pay 4 mana for this. Oh, I wish this could be an instant instead of a sorcery. I wish this could target multiple enchantments rather than just the one enchantment. And what am I doing this for? Just because I can also destroy a land as well? It's interesting, but I think there's just easier ways of getting rid of lands in Pauper, and the deck that gets rid of lands in Pauper probably doesn't play this. I have not looked at Gruul Ponza lists for a while, but I'd be relatively shocked if this showed up anywhere outside of maybe a 2 of in a sideboard, and I still don't think it would go there. I'm gonna give this a 3.3 because these are good things that it does. But I'm still not 100% sure this is the play. Let's keep going. To Nyxborn Unicorn. I'm almost positive we have done Nyxborn Unicorn before. I'm pretty sure because I talked about Bestow and I talked about how this is all right, but we've got Nyxborn Hydra that's also in Modern Horizons 3 that does all of this stuff more interestingly or more effectively for Pauper. So I'm going to skip this one. It was an okay card if I remember right. Carrion Screecher is 3 and a black for a 3/1 flying zombie bird. That's all it does. I like the art, but that's a pretty French vanilla card, and that's not great. You know, I hate doing this comparison, but this is 4 mana for a 3/1 flying zombie thing. And this is Refurbished Familiar. Right? There we go. Refurbished Familiar, 4 mana, but you can make that 1 mana very easily with the Affinity for Artifacts. It also flies. It has the Enters trigger where it makes an opponent discard a card or you draw a card. And yeah, it's a 2/1 instead of a 3/1. But why would you just not play Refurbished Familiar over Carrion Screecher every time? Every time. At best, this is a 4 mana 3/1 that flies. And at best, this is a 1 mana 2/1 that flies and makes them discard a card or you draw a card. And the Ender's triggers means you can do all sorts of funky things by blinking it and reanimating it, or not dead after all, that kind of stuff. And those tricks don't work with this. This is just a French vanilla creature. I'm spending a lot of time on a French vanilla creature and giving it a frankly rude comparison, but it is a 4-mana black flying creature, zombie, I suppose, that has 1 toughness. And you look at the two together and you go, you'd never play Carrion Screecher. Not once. Carrion Feeder, that's a card. Carrion Screecher, though, no. Let's give this a 1.3. It does fly, but that's also pretty expensive for a 1 toughness creature. Hexplate Golem is not very good, but I love it anyway. It's 7 mana for a 5/7 artifact creature. That's a golem from Mirrodin Besieged. Had the same art the entire time. It's vanilla. It's just a 5/7 for 7, which is not incredible stats. And we have so many better reanimation targets. We have so many better artifact creatures. Mirror Enforcer is only a 4/4, but it's 7 mana with the affinity for artifacts as well. So you can get those on the board more often. There's just a ton. There was even like Pauper cards that aren't played in Pauper really much at all. There's Iron Giant. Yeah. Iron Giant. This is from Final Fantasy. Sees no play. I tried to put it into a Tron deck, and it's fine. It works, but it's not as good as some of the other Tron things you can put. But this is a 7 mana artifact creature, Vigilance, Reach, Trample, so already pretty good, and a 6/6. I would take a 6/6 over a 5/7. And the keywords matter. I don't know. It's just there's a lot of things going against this card. And the biggest one is it's vanilla. Your opponent can block all day long with Eldrazi spawns or Colony Garden tokens or little 1/1s. They'll figure out a way. Birds from Mischievous Mystic, not Mischievous Mystic. Mischievous Mystic? No, that's not what it's called. Oh, I really need to. I also need to remember how to spell. That's not how you spell it. Yeah, never mind. You know what I'm talking about. The Murmuring Mystic. Murmuring. That's the one hey, that's it. Mischievous Mystics from Foundations, isn't it? Yeah, Murmuring Mystic. Bird tokens. You can block all day with that. So this is pretty disappointing. Even though it is generally kind of big stats beater, there's way better generally big stat beaters out there in Pauper. Let's give this guy a 1.5, I guess. No, 1.4. He's just as bad, if not worse, than the flyer that we just saw. Spectral Gate Guards is 4 and a white. A lot of expensive cards today. It's a 2/5 Spirit Soldier with Soulbound. You may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. As long as this creature is paired with another creature, both creatures have Vigilance. I think the Soulbound mechanic is interesting. And there are some other cards that use Soulbound in better ways. This one is fine. Giving a couple creatures Vigilance, it's kind of whatever. A 5 mana 2/5 with Vigilance that gives another creature Vigilance, but can also lose Vigilance if that other creature died. Although when that happens, you can play another creature, and Soulbound still works with that. As long as this guy is out on the field, when you play another creature and this guy is unpaired, that will pair them back up again. So it's an interesting mechanic. There's a blue one that I think is pretty good. Let's check that real quick. Soulbound and blue and legal in Pauper. Okay. Is Soulbound 2 words? Yes, soulbound is 2 words. That must be it. Did I just not pay attention? Very possible that I didn't pay attention. Oh, what am I doing? Wait, no, that should work. What's happening here? Yeah. Soul Bond. Oh my god. I'm so stupid. I'm the one with the YouTube channel, folks. There we go. That's what I'm. Tandem Lookout is the one I was looking for, because that one lets you draw a bunch of cards, and you can do some really cool and dirty stuff with that. Put that on a Black Mage's Rod token, and go to town, baby. That's fun. Anyway, don't worry about any of that. Spectral Gate cards, it's fine. It's fine. There's probably some really cool creatures that you could give vigilance to, but I think there are better ways of doing it than playing a 5-mana 2/5. I think that's true. Let's give this a 2. Thermal Glider is 2 and a white for a 2/1 human rebel. It's got flying and protection from red. These are interesting. You know, these protection cards, sometimes you'll see them in sideboards. This one not so much, because there is a hawk or an eagle. It has protection from red. I'm going to keep looking up other cards here, but we're going to go protection from red and white, and let's say also flying and legal in the Pauper format. Yeah, Free Wind Falcon. That's the one we're looking for. This one, a little cheaper and has the same stuff, flying and protection from red. You'll see this as a sideboard piece sometimes in Bogle's decks, just to have something that stops lightning bolts, that then you can pile on your enchantments on, because the thing starts with protection from red, which is really nice when you're trying to get your Bogles down and they're able to, you know, use Breath Weapon or something and wipe out your Bogles before you're able to put the stuff on there. But that won't I guess that won't happen with Free Wind Falcon, because protection from red means it won't take the damage, even though it will. Damage will try to happen to it, and it'll prevent that damage because it has protection. Protection's interesting. But yeah, would you rather? Do you want to pay 1 more mana to get 1 more point of toughness, or 1 more point of power? And the answer is, in those Bogles decks, no. You want to get this down as fast as possible so you can put down more enchantments on it, and the power, you'll get enough power from the enchantments. Don't worry about 1 little point of power to spend 1 extra mana on. Mark Zug, looking good. Actually, this is the I don't know a ton about the Magic lore from Mercadian Masks, but this is also the land that can give you protection from artifacts, right? Forgot the name of the thing. Citadel something? I can't remember. Tower of something. But it's a cool little reference in there. Anyway, the card itself, I don't think is all that good. It is a rebel, which is somewhat interesting. There are ways of grabbing rebels. That's kind of rebels' whole deal, is that you can search your library for rebels and put them into your hand or put them on the battlefield, one of the two. And that's kind of cool to be able to go grab a piece. This is probably a sideboard piece that you could put in a rebels deck that you know you're going up against red. Well, this is a great card to go find, but I think those decks are generally just too slow to really work in this format. And this guy, you know, like we said, the Free Wind Falcon just kind of does everything that it does, but at a cheaper rate. So we'll give this guy a 1.9, I think. No, he's better than what we saw. Let's give him a 2.1. Emberwild Augur is 1 and a red for a 2/1 Goblin Shaman. You can sacrifice this creature, and it deals 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. Activate only during your upkeep. Not amazing. From Future Sight, which is fun. But, wait. Yeah, okay, I was going to say, because Future Sight came before Planeswalkers, but they were thinking about Planeswalkers in Future Sight, so I was wondering, does this guy have the Planeswalker text? And no, he never does. He never did. right? Yeah, he never did. He's always just said player, but he's been eroded, or I get like planeswalkers kind of work as players now, so they just generally say player or planeswalker when that happens. When it's direct damage like this. Not that you have to worry about it in Pauper. There's no legal planeswalkers in Pauper. One of the reasons I really like Pauper, honestly, I stopped playing not because they brought in planeswalkers, but I stopped playing at the end of Lorwyn block. So planeswalkers were just starting to become a thing, and I thought they were interesting. I got a Chandra and I got a Liliana from my initial packs of Lorwyn, and I thought they were really cool. Like, whoa, free spells every time. And they haven't released any at common. They've made uncommon ones, and they're interesting. But I kind of like that Pauper's a format that feels a little bit more like old school 60 card Magic, in that some of these newer card types and mechanics don't show up. Battles are not at common yet. Planeswalkers are not at common yet. I was gonna say there's not a ton of UB that is Pauper playable, but that's not true. we've seen a lot of Lord of the Rings cards that are really good. There's like a couple Spider-Man cards that are somewhat useful. Final Fantasy cards see a lot of play. Like there's plenty of stuff that shows up from Universes Beyond, but there is a little bit of it was a simpler time. No planeswalkers, no battles. This is all not not useful to the case we're trying to make for Emberwild Augur. 2 mana for a 2/1. It's fine. Having to sacrifice it at your upkeep means you can't attack with it and do the damage and then sacrifice it. So I think most of the time I just want like a Mog Fanatic instead of this, and I don't really want to play a Mog Fanatic either. I don't love it. The timing restriction really kills it, but I think even without the timing restriction, it's not all that great. Also, the timing restriction screws this up in terms of you can't just sacrifice this in response to somebody trying to wipe the board or somebody trying to target removal this. That's really rough too. It really hinders what you're able to do with this card. You play this on turn 2, on their turn 2 they bolt this or shock this or whatever, and you never got to your upkeep to be able to sacrifice this guy and do the damage. So you spent 2 mana to not burn them out, and that sucks. That really sucks. I'm gonna give this a 1.5. In fact, I don't really like it. Crown of Fury. I remember this card. It's 1 in a red for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. You could sacrifice this aura and enchanted creature, and other creatures that share a creature type with it get +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. This is a cycle, isn't it? Crown of... Oh, no. Card name. Crown of, and we'll say Onslaught. Yeah. I think we've even looked at this series before, this cycle before. Crown of Awe gets used in Bogle's decks again as a sideboard piece. Some of these other ones are interesting as well. I think Fury is actually okay. 2 mana for a 1 power boost and first strike is not amazing, but it is persistent. At least you get that turn over turn instead of just a lot of those first strike spells like a Sure Strike or something like that gives you +2 power and first strike for a single mana, but that's only for the turn. So turn over turn, that's kind of nice. Being able to sacrifice the crown and give a big alpha strike if you're going wide is pretty cool. Like this is on a goblin. You're in red. You're probably playing goblins if you're going for some kind of go wide strategy in red. It's not bad. It's not bad to go do a big strike like that. Giving them all trample would be better, but giving them first strike and a power boost is okay. I think that's all right. Auras generally have issues, though. If you're not playing them in Bogle's decks, it's really easy to get blown out with them. I think your mileage is going to vary. I think the strength is there, but the drawbacks are also there, and it makes it tough to add it to your deck because you really want to have more kind of guaranteed style effects. Let's go with a 2.4. Maybe it's just the nostalgia in me, but I like the card. I like the card. I like what it does. Foundry Screecher, 2 and a black for a 2/1 flying bat. And this creature gets +1/+0 as long as you control an artifact. That's kind of not bad. Because you go back to the refurbished familiar discussion, and now we go, okay, well, it's 3 mana for a 3/1 flyer. That's certainly better than the Carrion Screecher that we saw before. And having an artifact's no big deal. In fact, mono black most black decks are going to have some kind of artifact in there, and a lot of black decks are very much thinking about artifacts, because they want to play those refurbished familiars. They play their Blood Fountains, they play their Vault of Whispers, they play Nihil Spell Bombs. There's all sorts of artifacts out there. They play foods for the Food Pestilence decks. There's a lot of artifacts showing up in black specifically. Now, is this guy worth it? Do you play this alongside your refurbished familiars? Because you're not replacing your refurbished familiars with this. You're definitely not. But is this good enough to really do it? And the answer is probably no. This is still a 1 toughness creature, and it's really easy to get picked off by things like Cast into the Fire or Electrickery or the Suffocating Fumes. Yeah, there's plenty of things that will just blank this guy out pretty immediately. And not being able to give a toughness boost along with the power is not great. So I'm going to give this thing not an amazing score, but it is certainly better than the Carrion Screecher, and I think it's closer to viable, even if I don't think it's actually viable. Let's give this thing a 1.8. Next up, Ghastly Demise for a single black mana. Have we done this one before? I know I've looked at this art before, but I think I just look at this art because I like it. I don't think we've done this one before. Let's do it. Ghastly Demise, a single black mana for an instant. Destroy target non-black creature if its toughness is less than or equal to the number of cards in your graveyard. Interesting. Really interesting. Now, you have to think about the other removal spells and where this kind of ranks in there. Let's just talk about a couple of common removal spells. Pun not exactly intended there. But Snuff Out, okay? Snuff Out, premier removal spell in Pauper. That is 3 mana, 4 mana? Nobody pays the mana for Snuff Out because you can pay 0 if you have a swamp and you just take 4 life. That destroys a non-black creature. And it's free in a lot of cases. That you're probably going to want to play more than Ghastly Demise. Cast Down, very common Pauper black removal spell. 2 mana to destroy any target non-legendary creature at instant speed. Some days this is going to be better because you can spend less mana on it. Some days Cast Down is going to be better because it's unconditional. You just destroy the creature. You don't have to worry about how many cards are in your graveyard. Defile, right? Defile's the swamp one. Yeah. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp you control. If you're in mono black, this is a way of getting around indestructible creatures. This is, this can get you some really big minus, but mostly it's about indestructible creatures there. This is cool, undoubtedly cool. Can be very useful. Non-black is going to have some of the similar issues that you come out with Snuff Out. You come out with Doomblade and Terror, but where is it? Does it get played over all the other ones that you have access to? You have to have a kind of specific deck for it. You need a deck that is putting a bunch of cards in its graveyard. So you're looking for something like dredge decks. The problem is if you dredge this into your graveyard, it doesn't do anything for you anymore. So you don't necessarily want decks where you're milling yourself a bunch. You want decks where you are filtering a lot. So you want maybe more like Rakdos decks that are using Faithless Looting, that are constantly drawing you cards and discarding you cards. You want Dimir style decks that are also doing a lot of looting and putting cards in the graveyard. Does this work in Dimir Terror? Maybe, because you're putting a ton of cards in your graveyard, and that this sometimes will clear the board of a couple things. The problem is, I think in all of those instances, especially when you start splashing other colors, you just have access to so many better quality cards that you go, okay, well, I need 4 removal spells, or I need so many removal spells. I think you're mostly taken care of by the big ones. So while this is a good, cheap option, 6 cents for a card like that, pretty cool. Even 22 to get the original nice looking one. Do you play 4 copies of this, or do you play 4 Defiles? Do you play 4 Cast Downs? Do you play 4 Snuff Outs? Do you play Doomblades? Doomblade doesn't even really see play in the format anymore, which is crazy. It's Doomblade. So yeah, you have to be aware of all those things. It is a 1 mana destroy spell, and that's pretty good. That is pretty good. That can do some cool things, but I think overall you're going to find that you just generally get more success with some of the other effects. And also you do have to note there's a lot of graveyard hate in the format. So you try playing this, your opponent breaks out their Relic of Progenitus, or they crack their Nihil Spellbomb, or their Tormod's Crypt, or whatever they're doing. Like there's plenty of ways to get rid of graveyards. And now when this is on the stack, well, you don't have any graveyards, so the toughness part doesn't matter anymore. Right? You have a toughness of 0 unless your opponent has a toughness of 0, and the creature's already dead at that point. This doesn't do anything. And that is a bummer. You do generally want your kill spells to kill the creature, and putting it on another condition that your opponent can pretty easily manipulate is not a good way of getting wins either. All in all, I'm still going to give this a 3.1 because it can be a really efficient removal spell. I just think there are other pretty darn efficient removal spells that don't have the drawbacks that Ghastly Demise has. Interesting card, though. I'm glad we got to have a discussion like that on the show, because I think it does show that some of these cards have some interesting value, and you have to consider them more than just play the obvious staples that everybody talks about. Because sometimes you find those hidden gems, and they really do work in your decks. And Ghastly Demise might work for you in a deck that you're doing. I have a deck right now. I just made a Rakdos deck that throws a ton of cards in the graveyard. And it's all about having a bunch of cards in the graveyard. It's like kind of Dredge, but it's not really about... Like, Dredge is kind of the backup plan. And I was thinking, like, does this go in here? Does this card go in there when I first saw this card today? And I don't think it does, because again, the version I'm doing mills a bunch of cards into your graveyard. And once this is milled into your graveyard, it's kind of useless to you. But there are decks that might go, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And there you go. All right, let's keep going on. 2 Poison Dart Frog. This is our final official card of the day. Poison Dart Frog is 1 and a green for a 1/1 frog. And it's got reach. You can tap it to add a mana of any color, and you can pay 2 mana to give this creature Death Touch until end of turn. This is a cool card. I remember I didn't play it pre-release of Lost Caverns of Ixalan, but I did open a lot of Ixalan packs. And I thought this guy was neat. I was thinking about him more for Commander. He's a cool mana dork. He stops opponents from swinging in with a lot of stuff, just knowing that you could always give him Death Touch. But generally, just like a nice 2-mana dork that fixes your mana. That's also cool. But he can work in other formats too. I think he was a half. He's still in standard right now. I think we've probably powered him out of standard at this point, especially when Foundations brought Land of War Elves back. But it's still all right. It's still all right. And I think Pauper could also play him to halfway decent effect. Pauper, though, also has Land of War Elves in the format, also has Elvish Mystic in the format. Like, there's all sorts of mana dorks that are better than this guy. But with the versatility that this guy offers, maybe. Frog is not an incredible creature type in Magic. You don't get a lot of support for frogs in the same way that you do elves, certainly. But I don't know. I like the guy. I don't think I'd really put him in any of my Pauper decks, but I do like the guy. Let's give him a 2.3. That's maybe a little high, but look at him. How could you give him anything other than a 2.3 or higher? He's so cute. Let's do one bonus card and get out of here. Rescue Leopard is 2 and a red for a 4/2 cat. And whenever this creature becomes tapped, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I do remember seeing this guy at pre-release for Charkier Dragonstorm, and when I saw him, I thought, nah, he's I don't need him. And that's in limited, baby. So in constructed formats, I just don't think this guy has a chance in hell, right? 4/2 is a interesting stat line for 3 mana. Like you are getting like a halfway decent power for the rate, for the money that you're putting in. And yeah, you do get to rummage every time it becomes tapped. You can tap it for reasons that are not just attacking. You know, Tarkir Dragonstorm brought in the Harmonize ability, so you can tap this guy for Harmonize and cast those Harmonize spells. We're in a standard that has a lot of vehicles. We're in a standard that has those planets that you can tap down, or that you can tap your creatures down to station. There's lots of ways and reasons. There's Convoke, certainly. Think about Convoke. There's lots of ways to tap down creatures for extra value, and this guy says he loves to get tapped. But then sometimes he's just a 4/2 who can swing in for halfway decent damage. Four damage is a decent amount of damage. That's a fifth of your life total, fifth of your starting life total in Pauper, and in most formats. He's not good, right? Because he's basically vanilla. He's very easy to block and kill. That's why generally you probably are going to want to use him more for like Harmonized style things. But if you can clear the board, and you're in red, so you have ways of clearing the board, this guy can swing in for 4 damage, and you filter a card. That's the ideal scenario, and you know what? That sounds like a pretty good scenario to me, of a little card filtering and 4 damage to the opponent. Sweet. But most of the time, this guy is going to get picked off very easily, or he's going to swing in, you discard the card and draw a card, and then somebody blocks him and he dies, and that's all you really got off him. I don't know if that's a very good deal. I don't think that's a very good deal at all. And other times, he'll just get popped before he even gets to tap once. And then you paid 3 mana for really nothing. So, I don't know. Not a huge fan. I'm going to give it a 1.8. You know, this has like some function, but for the most part, just not something you really ever need to play or think about. Thanks for joining me on this one. We will see you next time. Bye.